Okay, let us continue from where we stopped with lecture 1 GIS. So I think we have seen different kinds of examples of application of GIS information times. Now let us start from the surveillance and the GIS examples on rollback malaria partnership. So the global partnership to enable effective sustainable action against malaria. The WHO strategy includes POP treatment with effective drugs, vector control methods, preventive treatment in pregnancy, emergency and epidemic preparedness and response. So this program developed GIS to strengthen surveillance at local level for early detection or response to epidemics, complement existing national and international health monitoring systems, integrate information on community intervention, control interventions, private and public providers, partner intervention areas and resources. And as you know, at this behavior, malaria is more climate related. So for this purpose, application of GIS makes prevention and control of malaria very, very effective. So currently throughout the world and even in our countries, we are using different kinds of GIS versions, GIS embedded softwares to prevent and to control malaria. For example, in Ethiopia, different kinds of analytical public health softwares, starting from the previous EHMIS, DHIS to ECHIS, and most of them contains GIS applications as a powerful analytical softwares. So outbreak investigations and the geographical information systems. You know, GIS used to strengthen data collection, management and analysis, to develop early warning systems, to plan and monitor response programs, to communicate large volumes of complex informations in simple, effective and short way to decision makers and publics. So GIS also used to map sexually transmitted infections, for example, used in Baltimore to map distribution of syphilis before and during and after outbreaks. So data suggests that this is spread outward from two central causes of infection, and as we have said earlier, here the GIS is used to know the foci or the center as the starting points of the sexually transmitted diseases. So now let us come to a system that enabled the capture of different kinds of spatial data for GIS. So that system is called Global Positioning Systems, or shortly as GPS. Global Positioning System add functions to GIS. It increases capabilities and it is a critical tool for precise and the identification of research subjects, locations, distance to related geographical features. So it allows users to locate positions on an electronic map using satellite technologies. So it's an approach which could be applied to infectious disease surveillance and outbreak investigations and response. This means, for example, in our primary health care service, if someone caught with malaria come to our health centers, we have to give a treatment for that case, and also we have to go to his home to identify different kinds of environmental risk factors for that cases, and we have to do something there to prevent the incidences of the infections from the surrounding villages or communities. So to measure distance to exposure, example water source, another example rather than malaria like cryptosporidium or farm with hoof and mouth disease. So we can do different kinds of activities by using GPS. So an outbreak investigation and response are time-limited activities. It must be done quickly to have a greatest effect. So for this purpose, GIS and GPS can greatly speed a field work. So now let us come to geospatial data, information and the tools. So the sources of GIS data can be, as we have said, satellite, especially for remotely sensed data, GIS mobiles, data, digital documents, web, and different kinds of softwares. So data for GIS applications includes digitized and scanned data, databases, GPS field samplings of attributes, remote sensing, and aerial photography from different kinds of satellites and aircrafts. So the digital representation of geospatial data have a different kinds of advantage than the analog. For example, we can say digital data is easy to update, while analog data is after it made difficult to change. Digital one is easy and quick to transfer, and analog one is very slow to transfer. Storage space required is relatively small in digital devices, but it is very high, to map a village. We can have more than 3 or 4 papers. So it is easy to automate analysis for digital, and very difficult and inaccurate to analyze analog data. So here are types of geospatial data. So they can be of 2 types, vector format and raster format. When we say a digital map can be of 2 types. The first one is vector format or shape file. This can include a point map, a line map, and a polygon map. When we say raster format, it is of 2 types of file, GOTIF and GRID. So it looks like this, as you can see from the picture. So to illustrate this one, let us come to the data model concept. There are 2 main data models or conceptualizations used for spatial data: vector data model and raster data model. So vector data model use discrete objects such as point, lines, and polygons to represent the geometry of a real-world entities, discrete entities. Example: a road, a river, a city and towns, lakes or wetlands, farmland, and etc. Raster data model represents a continuous phenomena that may change continuously across a region. Example: elevations, rainfall, temperature, soil moisture, and etc. So raster model uses grid cells for representing continuous phenomena. Especially when we observe a Google map, we can observe something looks like a real picture of the landscape. That is what we call as a raster map data map. So here is another illustration. So the data model concept. Vector includes a line, a point, and a polygon drawn on XY axis, but raster model includes points, line, and area developed with grid lines. So here is data model concepts or layers, including raster or image, vector or real world. So now let us come to the scale concept in GIS. So scale is the relationship between distance on a map and the corresponding distance on the earth. So the ratio of distance on a map to actual ground distance expressed in ratio. Example: 1 to 100,000, 1 to 1,000. So 1 to 100,000 means 1 unit of distance on the map represents 100,000 of the same units of distance on the earth. So most of the time large scale maps show more detail and a smaller denominator, or large scale or small map to ground ratio, which is called as small scale. So we prefer smaller scales to show the details of real world things on a map. So scale is the relationship between distance on a map and the corresponding distance on the earth. And we need smaller scales most of the time for a detail. So in GIS data, as it is stored in a very different way than paper map data, map scale is different, and the paper maps have a fixed map scale, while GIS maps don't have a fixed map scale. So as you zoom it out, the scale can be reduced. As we zoom in, the scale can increase. So this means that geographic data in a GIS doesn't really have a defined map scale. When we come to resolution, resolution is the size of the smallest feature that can be represented in a surface, especially ground resolutions and spatial resolutions. So spatial resolution of an image is an indication of the size of a pixel in terms of ground dimension. A spatial resolution of 30 meters means that one pixel represents an area 30 meters by 30 meters on the ground. So high resolution means features more closely resemble real-world features. Small objects can be detected with high resolutions. Low resolutions means features simplified or not show at all any large features are visible. So there is also another concept in GIS which is called the spatial relationship, which looks like do they overlap, is one contained by the other, does one crosses the other on map. So geometries can be spatially related in different ways, so we have to observe on the map different points by using the relationship they have. For example, we can say equals if A is the same as B, touches if A touches B, overlaps if A and B have multiple points in common, contains if A contains B, disjoint if A shares nothing with B, covers if one point covers another and vice versa, crosses if one point have at least one point of another point. So now let us come to the concepts of spatial analysis, which is very important. So spatial analysis is a technique to analyze data in terms of location, find out patterns, identify relationship among features, plan efficient routes, perform site selection, model or predict values based on discrete sample observations, and others. So a relationship is something like proximity, overlap, intersection, visibility, and accessibility can entail different kinds of informations, and they can give different kinds of hints for us when we observe different kinds of layers one with another. So we can detect patterns like hotspot, outliers, clusters, change over time. So this functionality is what make GIS very, very interesting, especially in healthcare analysis. So here is an example of spatial analysis and modeling concept. For example, there is an input data set, geoprocessing tool, then we can result in a new data set. For example, here you can observe while layers contain 4213 and another raster layer contains 3411. So if we merge these two layers, we can get the layers which looks like 7624. So here also we have one input, and then we use a clip features to produce an output features which looks like this from vector models. So now let us come to the summaries of this course. So we have said the spread of disease, especially infectious disease, is unavoidable. Especially infection moves from individual to individual following networks of contact within populations through local or global transmissions. For this purpose, so application of GIS makes the understanding of these disease transmissions very simple. So geographical information system capacity to capture geospatial information ideally suited for infectious disease surveillance and control, highly relevant to meet demands of outbreak investigations and response. So next issue will show how GIS used to conduct rapid need assessment, and here is an additional resource for GIS mapping. You can use these all materials for further reading, and also here are references. And we do have also an individual assignment slides, and I have prepared for you 2 projects, and the first one will be scored out of 20 marks. The second one scored out of 30. This means this